San Diegans who support and oppose same-sex marriage are gearing up for tomorrow's arguments before the U.S. Supreme Court by leading rallies both here and in D.C. I asked two local activists on opposite sides of the issue about their personal stake in the court's decision. Reverend Daryl Kistler, a heterosexual married pastor at Kensington Community Church, supports same-sex marriage. He plans to lead a prayer vigil for the justices on the Supreme Court steps on Tuesday.
As a Christian, I'm in favor of traditional marriage. I belong in a traditional marriage. I'm married myself, but it's a both and as far as I'm concerned. It's traditional marriage and same-sex marriage because so many of the people that I know who are in partnered relationships are living in a traditional married way. They're a couple with kids and a house and a dog and pay their taxes and go to baseball games. For me, it's not an issue of either or, it's an issue of both and.
Charles Lamandry, president and chief counsel of the Freedom of Conscience Defense Fund, opposes same-sex marriage. He'll be speaking on the steps of San Diego's federal courthouse tomorrow.
Is marriage just about adult emotional attachments, or is it about children? If you take children out of the picture, you can redefine it any way you want. But the people like me who feel strongly and passionately about preserving traditional marriages because marriage only makes sense in the context of the children that are the product of that union.
And you have children?
I have got 5 kids of my own, as do many people. And that's what's best for them and best for society.
Now, in 2008, you'll be remembered. In 2008, California voters passed Proposition 8, banning same-sex marriage with 52% of the vote. But it seems attitudes, even among politicians, are changing. Glenn Smith, professor of constitutional law at the California Western School of Law, joins me with more on the legal aspects of the Supreme Court's decision. Welcome back, Glenn.
Thank you.
So remind us, Proposition 8 was passed, and then how did it go from being passed by voters here to the Supreme Court?
Well, a group of same-sex couples who wanted to be married and couldn't after Prop 8 brought a lawsuit in federal district court. And after days of testimony and all that, the federal judge in that case ruled that Prop 8 was unconstitutional. It went then up to the Ninth Circuit and took a little side trip to the California Supreme Court about the question of whether the Proposition 8 proponents could be parties to appeal or not. The Ninth Circuit ultimately threw out Prop 8 on a narrower ground, and that's being appealed to the Supreme Court and argued tomorrow.
So in these arguments, who's in favor of keeping the ban on same-sex marriage or keeping in force, I guess, Proposition 8?
Well, the formal parties are the proponents of Proposition 8, the people that brought the initiative to declare that marriage was only between a man and a woman. And they're supported, as typically in these large cases, by dozens of friends of the court who take the position that you just heard, that traditional marriage should be opposite-sex couples.
And what about who's arguing the chief people against to overturn, I should say, this ban?
Well, what the parties that won below in the California courts are being represented by 2 very top-flight Supreme Court advocates who argued Bush versus Gore, and then the U.S. government has been given 10 minutes to also argue against Proposition 8. So the Obama administration is going to be arguing that, again, Prop 8 is unconstitutional.
Yes, he came out in supporting same-sex marriage. How successful are challengers to state law been with, like, the current justices?
Well, it just really depends on the issue. Certainly there have been a couple of more pro-gay rights decisions in the last decade or so than we would have expected from the single case in the late 1980s that sort of slammed the door on same-sex rights. So the court has been moving as the society's been moving as well, but whether the court will be willing to take any step forward and how big a step is what's at issue in these cases.
Let's talk about if the ban happens. If they uphold it and they say, yes, Prop 8 can continue, what happens then?
Well, if Prop 8 continues, then there's nothing that the U.S. Constitution says that would prevent marriage from being between a man and a woman in California. So if people want to fight it, they need to fight it politically. They need to try to overturn Prop 8. And as you know, what we can do with one majority, we can undo with another majority.
Okay, and then how about if the Supreme Court rules that, yes, they overturn this ban, will that have larger implications? What happens then?
Well, in California, presumably very soon after that decision, with Proposition 8 out of the way, we would return to the older days of having same-sex marriages, and couples would begin celebrating same-sex marriages in California. Then there's all kinds of permutations down the road as to how you would fight that. But that would be a strong statement that at least the way California did it with Prop 8, the U.S. Constitution forbids that.
Alrighty, we are out of time. Glenn Smith, thank you so much for talking
you're welcome.
with us.